This video is not intended for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Humanity, look how far you've fallen. Greetings, one and all, and welcome to this special edition of Seven Kinds of Mischief. I'm your host, Stone Loki, and with me today is the one, the only Kamran Pasha. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. I love your intro. You know, I'm a huge fan of Norse mythology, so I really connected with it.
That is awesome. So am I, obviously. So am I. How are you doing? How have you been doing?
I'm well. We're getting through 2021 now after crazy 2020. So
oh man. You know what? I was just going through my phone last night and I was looking at all these pictures I took. And there's a picture I took from I think June or July of last year where it says, "Oh, it may take 2 years to get through the coup." And I was like, "Nah." At the time, of course, I was like, "This is one big joke." And now I'm like, you know what? They could have been right. They may be right.
Certainly, I think the global mindset, and some of us might consider it a pathology, is to take its time to fix things. And, you know, people seem to have unfortunately adopted this, like, yeah, I think, you know, we want to sort of live like this forever. And, you know, when you have people sort of defaulting to that, it's going to take a while.
It is. And I can't believe we're still stuck. It's almost like being in cement. We're still stuck. I was like, no way this will last more than 6 months. No way. Yeah. And we're still stuck.
That's where people are. I mean, this is you know, we can go deeper into it, but let's talk about movies instead. You know, the world is what it is, and we'll make our best, you know, however society is playing out, which is how it's playing out. So
How did you get to Hollywood? How did you get involved in Hollywood?
Well, you know, I never imagined that I had any chance in Hollywood. I was born in Pakistan and came to the United States when I was 3 years old. And, you know, it just wasn't something that was a realistic thing for someone of my background, at least as I thought. And, you know, I'd always been a writer. I think I wrote my very first short story that got published in like the school newspaper in my elementary school in 5th grade. I wrote like a murder mystery based on Agatha Christie, right? Which I love those Agatha Christie books. And so I've always been a writer, but I could never have imagined a way to do it professionally in Hollywood. You know, I actually did work professionally as a writer out of college as a journalist for about 3 years. And then I went back to graduate school. It was in a JD MBA program. I was getting a law degree and an MBA. And I was honestly bored out of my mind. And I was like, what have I done? I was actually enjoying being a reporter. You know, I've taken the wrong path in my life. I've left something I enjoyed, which is writing professionally as a journalist, and not doing this thing. And the real reason, frankly, was I thought I could make more money and be whatever. I'll just the you know, money, fame, you know, power, whatever people think they can get out of being a successful lawyer or Wall Street person. That was what motivated me rather than personal fulfillment. And so when you do that, it doesn't really end well. And so I was sitting there in this accounting class in my MBA program, bored and out of my mind, thinking, what have I gotten myself into? And I wrote my first screenplay just to pass the time in that class. I didn't care what was going on. I couldn't make the balance sheet balance. None of it made any sense. And I graduated. I was working as a lawyer in New York City at a big, Wall Street law firm type thing. And, I was bored doing that. And I had the screenplay. I said, well, maybe I can do something with this. So I had no context in Hollywood. I did the worst possible way of trying to get someone to look at your screenplay. I just sent emails to random agents saying, "Hi, my name's Kamran Pasha. You have never heard of me, but I got this idea for a horror movie. I've written the script. Would you like to see it?" And most people didn't respond. A few people sent me like messages saying, "We don't accept submissions, unsolicited submissions from people we don't know." One guy responded, said, "Sure, send me your script, kid." I sent it to him. Didn't hear from him for months, forgot about it, assumed that's not happening. And then it was on Christmas Day of 2000. He called me up because my phone number was on the script, title page. He called me up and said, "I got your script. I didn't know who you were. I just put it in my I'll read someday garbage pail, right? Pile over there." And he said that this morning I randomly picked out a script from that pile. Yours was it. And I read it and I was like, "This is a really good horror movie. And I'd like to represent you." And I was like, "What?" What? And he did, and he got me in touch with some producers at Paramount, and I wrote a couple other scripts, and suddenly I sold those, and I sold 2 scripts, and I was like, I got into the Writers Guild just automatically by selling these 2 scripts to Paramount, and I was like, how did that happen? And suddenly I had gotten these huge checks for writing these scripts while I'm still working as a lawyer. And I had written them just in a few days because I didn't have a lot of time as a lawyer, right? I mean, you're working the full 80-hour weeks so I just crammed in these scripts whenever I could. And I was like, maybe I can do this. And it sort of fell into my lap. And I moved to Los Angeles in April of 2001. So it's literally 20 years ago this month that I moved to LA. And, I've been doing this now professionally since then. And it's been a crazy journey. There's been some great successes, a lot of failures, but I'm still here.
Yeah, you don't give up. You just keep going and keep putting out your work.
Mm-hmm.
I've told a couple of people that some people get discouraged with YouTube, and I'm like, just keep coming out with content. Eventually, someone's going to see it, someone's going to share it, so they're going to share it, and they're going to share it to more people. And you just keep coming out with content. Keep your content coming out on a regular basis, and someone's going to see it. Someone's going to watch it.
Yeah, just keep persisting. That's the answer to everything in life, right? And through persistence, you eventually learn your craft. Whether it's a screenwriter, whether it's a painter, whether it's a YouTuber, it's a persona. You eventually learn how to do it better with time, and eventually you start developing a following. And persistence is the only way. I've seen people here, that I started following 2 or 3 years ago. Sort of Star Wars critics, as I am a Star Wars critic, and they had like maybe 50 followers, right? And now they're like thousands, and they're monetized, and it's been fascinating to watch their journey as they got more sophisticated with time, and they began to understand how this medium works and how to attract viewers, and they learned it, and God bless them, they're successful.
Yeah, and it's changing, it's life changing, especially when you're doing stuff for other people. One of the things I really love that this has given me the opportunity to do is encourage other people and get them to realize, yes, I can get on a microphone and I can use my voice, and I can help out. I can help with charity. I can help with funding. I can help other people. And that is one of the most rewarding things that I didn't see coming. I thought, I'm just going to get on there and I'm going to get all this out, and I'm going to feel better after, every broadcast. I'll feel better because I get to say all this stuff and I get to get all this out. That's not the most rewarding thing. The most rewarding thing is giving back and encouraging others to do what they want to do. That's the best part.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wonderful thing that I've also witnessed is people begin to figure out that there are ways to do more than just promote yourself. And you can actually promote causes you believe in, help people that need help. And, the way the universe works is when you start doing that, it starts blessing you in ways you didn't expect, right? And you're doing that from a clean heart. Magically, things start happening.
What was it like? What was it like when you started to notice that things were changing? And the title of this is Getting Canceled with Kamran Pasha. On 420, getting canceled on 420 with Kamran Pasha. When did you notice that some things were changing, or were they always this way?
What do you mean by change? I just want to understand your question. What do you mean?
The demeanor in Hollywood.
Well, I mean, I think it's always been this way in the sense of politics, right? I mean, it's always been sort of liberal lefty town. It's always been filled with limousine liberals who say one thing and do another, right? That's
Right.
always been the case. It's been what I experienced 20 years ago when I showed up. You know, everyone talking about the socialist utopia while they're living in their really nice, gated mansions, right? I mean, so I mean that was always the case, right? But it started in the last few years. You started seeing the rise of this essentially self-righteous cancel type culture within Hollywood, and that comes from sort of the darker element within Hollywood. Hollywood always has been a sort of a backstabbing sort of culture, right? Everyone's trying to get on their own by getting somebody else down. That's always been hidden, but as sort of cancel culture arose on the online world, it facilitated that darker side of Hollywood, right? And people, I do believe social media, and I've been as much of a victim and as much of a perpetrator as everyone else. Social media creates sort of mass pathologies, right? We all get swept away in whatever we're fighting for, arguing for. We sort of lose a little bit of our humanity. We let our id take over, and like I said, I'm as guilty of that as others. Argue on social media about various things. In Hollywood, this promoted sort of the darker side of the industry and made it much more prevalent, and so. We also had the political events of the last 4 years with a certain gentleman being the president, that triggered a lot of people, and that accelerated some very extreme reactions in Hollywood. They felt like they had lost control of the narrative, and then they felt they had to reassert control, so that narrative became more important than actual narrative storytelling.
Yeah.
Political narrative became more important, and then in the most recent events, when now they believe that they've got their guy into office, now they feel that sort of stuff works. So it's been rewarded. So even though economically it wasn't really rewarded the last couple of years, socially it's been rewarded. And so, more than ever, I'm seeing Hollywood be, returning to sort of a mass hysteria when it comes to politics, and canceling each other, and it's just now, because it's become like the Salem witch trials. Everyone is terrified of being identified as being an outsider to the narrative, to the group, and being pointed at, there's a witch, right? And so everyone just starts pointing, there's the witch, somebody else, to get the fingers off them. That's where we are right now.
I've always said that Hollywood is the meat grinder. It chews you up and spits you out. I know half of my graduating class, at least half the girls, were like, I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to be a star. And any of them that left, I never saw them on TV. I never saw them in the movies. Most of them I never heard from again.
Yeah.
It's the meat grinder of the United States. You go and you try, and it maybe 1 in a million. I don't even know the numbers.
I mean, it is. I mean, it goes back to the old days, the old days of the young starlet showing up on the bus here from Omaha, right? And that goes back to the silent film days from 1910s, 1920s, right? And then, unfortunately going through the horrific abuse and casting couch, and that stuff still going on. In fact, the people perpetrating it are often the people that are the most vocal supporters of, we must end the meat, we must support you. I mean, they're the ones who, again, it's so you don't get pointed as the witch, you out everyone else as the witch, right? And so, that this town has been merciless. It's been ruthless. It's been, it's always been that way. It's been the place where people come because it's about dreams and about fantasies and about fame and glory and all of those things. And I was drawn to it for all those reasons too, like everybody else. I want to hang out with movie stars. I want to go to cool parties. I want to get an Oscar, right? But after 20 years of working in the hot dog factory, you don't really like the taste of hot dogs anymore, because see how it gets made, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where I am. And I mean, I love what I do, but I've gotten to a sort of blasé place about what the industry is as a culture to live in.
A lot of drama, I imagine. A lot of drama.
Sure, a lot of drama, because again, this is for the reasons we're talking about, that people are seeking, some people are actually here to make movies and to tell good stories and write good TV shows. Some people are here for that. A lot of people are here just, for the fame, the glory, the sex, the power, the wealth. And that's, I think, a very large portion of at least the successful people in this town, right? They came with that motivation and they got it. And so, it's not coming from a deeply profound spiritual place. It's coming from a very ego place. And so you're constantly afraid of that being taken away from you. And so you're constantly on the attack.
When I was in junior high, I was part of something called academic games. These were like almost like Jeopardy. Like you had your group and you did Jeopardy. Well, I was part of something called the acting team.
Okay.
And the acting team was you go up on stage and you do your little skit and you have fun doing it. Well, the first day I did this girl comes over and she was the head of our group. And she hands me this page with this writing on it. She's like, I want you to read this. Put it on this piece of cardboard and you're going to hold the cardboard up and you're going to read it. And I was like, why do I want to read it? And I'm watching them and they're like, and the deconstruction of 1940. And I'm like, no, that sounds horrible. Why? No. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I improv the whole thing.
Okay.
I just did it. I'm this sleazy reporter that gets in people's faces and I just improv the whole thing. And the acting coach was like, what made you want to do that? I said, well, I read this and I saw what they were doing. And I thought that looks really boring. We're supposed to be up there to impress, right? So anyway, I go through junior high and he really helped me do improv and I learned more and more improv as I went on. Yeah. And when I got to college, my first year, of course I take drama. I'm like, yeah, drama. I want to take drama. Professionally, I want to learn how to do this. And it was such a letdown. And I ended up turning to psychology and I ended up getting a degree in psychology. And it was just one of those things that I never, ever touched back on until I started to do this.
Okay.
And I would me and another guy, Mexican Iron Man, we would bounce back and forth with each other and do these improv skits. And how do you guys come up with this? Well, we don't. We bounce off of each other so well that we can improv a whole show and have fun. And I wonder if that fun of getting to be an actor, getting to do this. I tell people all the time, I have the coolest job ever. I get to go on, I get to talk to people and I get to talk about my opinion. And some of it, like I'd say 10% of it is show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Loki's Morning. But the rest of that's all me. And I'm having fun. Do you think that Hollywood's lost that fun? I mean, you get to be an actor. You get to be somebody else for 8 hours a day, and you get to do that. That would be like the coolest thing in the world. That's got to be fun, right?
Well, look at its best. At its best, it is fun. It's meant to be fun. This is a wonderful creative life. Look, a lot of people grumble, especially on our YouTube world here, about Hollywood's politics and blah blah blah. But the craft of this stuff is fun. Right, creating stories. Whether you're a screenwriter, you're whether you're a director, whether you're acting, or whether you're even working on the crew. And let's say you're a makeup artist and you end up doing makeup artist for Charlize Theron. Right, I mean, it's a great job. At its best, it's a wonderful experience. I mean, I've taken a lot of acting classes. I direct as well, and so I personally feel that a director needs to understand acting in order to direct actors properly. And it's a hard craft. It's also incredibly enjoyable when you actually go into the moment and you really live and be, another life. It's going back to our childhood imagination. It's all there. That part of it, the show part of it, is great. It's the show business. So the business part of it is where all the dark side happens, right? It's where all of us struggle to survive, and the industry has a lot of bad characters and always has a lot of bad characters behind the business part of it, and that's where the evil is unleashed.
Yeah, I can imagine. I saw it wouldn't maybe a couple months ago, I saw an article from Michael Dorn that said it would take something monumental to bring me back to Star Trek. Because sitting in that chair for 3 hours and becoming Worf, it's not just going to be a paycheck. They've got to bring me something monumental for me to come back. I don't want just a paycheck. And then yesterday, it was either yesterday or the day before, I see Michael Dorn suiting back up and going back to Star Trek. They've sent me my orders, and I'm going back to Star Trek.
Well, I mean, I'm sure. I hope they paid him well, and he's a great actor, and his character, is a major part of Star Trek legacy. They're also doing that because they're desperate. They don't know what to do with Star Trek. So they got to bring back all that was good with it.
Yeah, they brought back Patrick Stewart. They're bringing back Michael Dorn. They brought back Jerry Ryan. They brought back all these faces. I'm just hoping he held to that. I really am, because I want to see something monumental with Star Trek, not just politics. I think that's the yes, politics is always in a way. Politics was always like an underline. Like you watch Star Trek 6. That's about the wall coming down. That's about the Berlin Wall coming down. The Klingons and the Federation coming to terms with the fact that the neutral zone won't be there anymore. That is the United States and the Berlin Wall. That's the Berlin Wall and the Russia.
It's always been political. Star Trek has always been political and always been progressive in the sense it's looking forward to the future and trying to suggest that our society can be better in this way. It's always been that, and in a good way, right? The problem, and I'm going to say something here, some controversial stuff, which I'm always saying controversial stuff on YouTube, but
go ahead. Give us all the controversy we can handle, sir.
The reality is the kind of world that Gene Roddenberry was hoping for has kind of come about, and we've actually moved very far from the world of the 1960s, right? He did this. It was such a huge thing. First interracial kiss in history between a white man and a black woman, right? Kirk and Uhura on Star Trek, and now dating somebody outside your race or marrying somebody of another ethnicity is kind of the norm, right? It's perfectly normal. There's no one even really thinks too much about it, right? And so we're at a place where society has evolved a lot to the point that people are, of this young generation, which is trying to change the world, are getting a little frustrated because the world's kind of changed a lot from the world that they're talking about. And so they have to pretend the world hasn't changed from that time. Right. And that's where a lot of the politics of the current generation are, where it's erasing all of the history of the last 60 years, last 100 years of evolution of this society, because they got to find something to say the society sucks. And in the process, they're making society suck. They're pushing it backwards towards segregation, backwards towards all of these pathologies that we thought we escaped, because they're erasing all of history in order to be the first ones that dealt with racism in history. Right. And so now you got only black people can be in this room in the university, right? Where we have the BLM, and no white people can come in there. It's like, isn't that like 1955?
That's segregation. Yeah.
So in order to fix problems that have been worked on for decades, they're trying to erase all the previous work and go backwards. So the problem is now recreated back to the world that Roddenberry was trying to fix.
Yeah, I know recently in this last season of Star Trek Discovery, they said, "Oh, we're gonna have the first trans couple. We're gonna have the first this." And I'm like, "Do you guys not remember Deep Space Nine? That's what Jadzia was. That's what Jadzia Dax was. She had been a woman and a man and a woman twice, and then a man twice again. And she even had a on-screen relationship with another woman that had been married to her in a previous incarnation of herself." And you're like, guys, they've done this. They did this, and they did it beautifully.
They did this when it wasn't socially acceptable to be talking about these things, right?
That's right.
And so that's why we're in a generation right now that it's actually the social norm to be talking about all these things, right? So they're acting as if they're the first ones to ever deal with these issues, and they're doing it in an environment that's actually safe for them to say these things, right? So it's just like, okay, but that's where we are. We're reaching a place where a lot of the problems were solved, or at least a culture of addressing those problems is becoming the norm. So then now we have to erase the culture of addressing those problems to promote the problem and then be the hero that solves it.
That's right. That's right. I love it when someone points a finger at me and says, "Ist, Ob, Yahtzee." First, I had a woman stand with me when I got married. When I got married, there was a woman on my side, and my ex-wife had a gay man on her side that was her man of honor instead of a maid of honor.
And he wasn't hiding it back in 1960. No. You can't talk about it, right? So.
You can't talk about it. You can't openly display it. You can't have a wedding like that. One of my daughters is trans. She's trans, and I have absolutely no problem with that. I support her in her life decisions, and we get fingers pointed at us because of an opinion that we don't like a show, because we don't like a movie, because we dare speak up and say, you know what, guys, I know what you're trying to do here, but your story, it sucks. And you get labeled. When did we go back to this? When did we go back to this? It's like you said, first interracial kiss in the 1960s on Star Trek. Why are we back to this?
No, it's fascinating to me, and I'm being political here, but it's fascinating to me that we talk, and I'm saying this, I'm a minority. I'm a brown Muslim guy, and that's a minority. And it's not partially not always a liked minority in various parts of this society, right? And when we talk about systemic racism, I'm like, you want to talk about systemic racism or systemic bigotry? Hollywood is systemic bigotry. I've experienced it, right? I've experienced it directly. I mean, I'm not part of their club. They don't want me in the club. They've made it clear to me, like, there's no fear. I mean, it's been made clear to me. It's like, yeah, you're a great writer. You're absolutely brilliant at this. Yeah, but you're not, who you are is not what we want, hanging out. And so that was made clear. And I'm looking at we had, we're talking about systemic racism in society. I'm like, okay, how did we have a black president for 8 years, 2 terms?
Yeah, that I voted for.
Yeah, I voted for him the first time. I didn't vote for him.
Yes. Yes.
But whatever. I really believed in him the first time. And then I realized he's basically George Bush, with a new face, right? And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Same policies, smiling guy that looks right. Okay, whatever. So that was my view. And if anyone disagrees with that, God bless you. That's just my opinion. But, I was disappointed by him. But I'm saying, but America voted for him twice.
That's right.
Large landslide victories. And it's like, so, there is bigotry in the society. There's bigotry in all societies. But I'm like, how systemic is it if we as a country and all these white Southerners voted for this guy? I mean, like, and so that's the problem, is that literally it feels like nothing happened before 2017. That's where we are. Like 2017 is the beginning of history, and that's the culture.
I worked with an older gentleman. It was around the time he was running for office the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with this older gentleman, big, long, scruffy, white beard. And I was talking to him about him, and he said, I ain't voting for no liberal. I ain't voting. He didn't say black guy. He said, I ain't voting for no liberal. And I said, James, he's selling out stadiums. No president has done this since Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
He is getting the hype that Kennedy was getting.
Mm-hmm.
When Kennedy ran for office. No one's done that since then.
Yeah.
He's going to
have that kind of power. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to win. Well, I don't think so. And he won. And man, when I started to realize maybe something was wrong was when I saw people saying, I ain't going to have to pay my house loan now. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, he got in. We ain't going to have to pay for a house loan, and we're not going to have to do this, and everything's going to be free. And I'm like, and America's the land of golden streets, and where the bricks are made of gold. That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. We don't just become a socialist country overnight. It's not that doesn't work that way, and I wouldn't want it to work that way. That's why there are rules in place. And
even in the current environment, again, we're getting political there, but even the current environment, a lot of people voted for this current gentleman. A lot of people of the younger generation, that is the ones we're talking about, that think that there was no history before 2017 because they thought he was going to erase their student debt. And then he comes out right and says to a young person on national television, I ain't going to do that.
Mm-mm.
So, okay. Well, I mean, because what people don't understand is, and it's strange because we should understand because it's human nature, politics is just about rich people controlling society for themselves. That's always what it's been, right? So it's nothing new about that. The golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules, right?
That's right.
So society is always structured to funnel money to the top, to eliminate middle classes, to create serf classes. And we had moments in the United States history where we had enough upward mobility to challenge that. But, elites always like to be elites. They like to be in charge. That's how Hollywood works, right? They don't want you in the club. Like I said, they don't want you in the club. So they don't want an egalitarian society. They're telling you to vote for policies they're claiming are egalitarian that are just going to get them more power.
More money.
Yeah, that's the way it works. Elites don't want to be average schlubs like you. They don't want you to come into their country club. That's the way the world has always worked.
And that's absolutely that.
And
that's
we
not the way it should be.
Moments like Kennedy where it's been challenged and they end pretty badly. System don't like being challenged.
No, the system does not like. Do you think that's the problem with Hollywood? Is that the system in Hollywood just doesn't like to be challenged? I mean, you had that the big Me Too push, mm-hmm. and the thing with Weinstein, and the thing with the other guy that I can't even say his name on here because they'll probably shut me down for it. The guy with the island.
We had a lot of Hollywood buddies. A lot of Hollywood buddies.
Lot of Hollywood buddies.
I mean, but look, what you're saying is, yes, the town does not want to be challenged. It's structured that way. It is, think about this. What Hollywood has become the global, at least it's intended to, it might have begun to falter, but it certainly has for much of the last century been sort of the global market, center market of ideas. The Hollywood narrative controls how the planet thinks about things, right? And why would you ever let anyone in if you're controlling the planet's way of looking at the world? If you're the one creating the narrative, why would you ever let anyone in to challenge that power, right? And I've learned that from myself. Look, I said my political beliefs are probably pretty mainstream. My religious beliefs are a little different from most Americans, but my political beliefs are probably pretty mainstream. And I've been seen as a threat in this system just for showing up. Because they were when I arrived, there were essentially no Muslims in Hollywood, certainly none that were publicly talking about it. And I showed up, and I'm a religious guy, and I've been open about my politics, and my politics are right on a lot of issues. They're left on some issues, and just showing up was a problem in this town. And it's not just conspiracy theory. I've talked about this with my representatives, my managers and agents, because they got to figure out how to promote my career in the world that we're in. And, there are powerful executive producers that I know who have said openly to mutual friends of ours, I'm never going to hire that Muslim guy. He's really good. I'm never going to hire him. He's a threat. He's a threat to the narrative I want to say. And they say that, think he's going to stay in sort of in the bubble of the club, right? But the people tell me because they're shocked. They're shocked because, I show up and then people's masks come off and you see what they really think like. And so my presence in this town was a catalyst and a lightning bolt when I started rising. Like after Sleeper Cell, the show that really got me a lot of attention on Showtime, got a bunch of Golden Globe nominations, Emmy nominations about a Muslim FBI agent fighting Al Qaeda, and I was one of the writers and producers on our show. And LA Times did a full page article on me as this up and coming Muslim writer in Hollywood. That rankled a lot of people. Because then they realized, who the hell is this guy? He's actually influencing the narrative now. Like that Sleeper Cell show got a lot of attention, right? And it changed a lot of people's perceptions on the war on terror. And Hollywood didn't want those perceptions changed, right? And so right after Obama was elected, you suddenly see a slew of shows going back to the old Muslim terrorist guy, right? They needed to go back to that. And my presence was now proof that was actually a choice. It wasn't that they didn't know and there's nobody to challenge it. They're like, yeah, no, Cameron's going to challenge it. We don't want him to challenge that. This is the story we want to tell for our own reasons, right? So the town, like Hollywood is just a reflection of DC and DC is a reflection of Hollywood. It's about power structures who are controlling narratives and they don't want anyone challenging them. I got through to a certain level where I became an annoyance and they fought me and I've been getting back up as best as I can since that.
And that's, you worked hard, you've dedicated yourself to a goal in life. And the only thing that's keeping you from completely, because you have realized that, you did go in there. You did do what you did. You have been successful. You just got this wall that they're going, no, you can't pass this. But then they're turning around and they're telling the entire world, come here and live our way because it's so much better than what you've got now. What you've got now is you've got these walls put up where you can't succeed. Come here. We'll get you to succeed, but they're not really doing that.
I'll give you an example. Yeah, I'm a novelist as well, right? This is when I began. This is actually the moment that I realized that I had gone too far and the system was now shutting me down, right? From 2005, when Sleeper Cell launched, then the New York Times did pieces on it. I was featured in the New York Times as like this Muslim writer coming, and then my career started moving rapidly from that. From Sleeper Cell that worked on, I went from there to like the network. I went to Bionic Woman. I went to Kings, which was very well received, right? And it was right after Kings that I felt something started happening, right? Something, and I'll tell you the exact moment I knew something had gone wrong. And because I was rising so rapidly and getting so much attention, it was when I got my book deals. I got a 2-book deal at Simon & Schuster, and they published my novels. And it was in April of 2009, right after Obama was elected, that my first novel, Mother of the Believers, I'll show you right here. My first novel, it's a historical epic on the birth of Islam from the point of view of Muhammad's wife, right? And so it's an interesting historical epic, and I'm very proud of it. And it's a great sort of tale in my opinion, right? Though I wrote the book, so it's a great tale. But But the book got a lot of, the book got a lot of endorsements. Again, I was rising rapidly. I was hanging out sort of with the in crowd of a lot of people, so the cover endorsement was Amy Tan, who's a, global best-selling author. She gave me an endorsement, right? Stephen Pressfield is one of the best historical authors in the world, right? He gave me an endorsement. Reza Aslan, before he became really famous, gave me an endorsement. But I had a lot of very prominent people give me blurbs and like, wow, this is a great book, And so Simon & Schuster was incredibly excited because having Amy Tam and Stephen Pressfield blurbing it, and they're like, wow, this is going to do well. And they started sending it around to try to get reviews. And something strange happened because they couldn't get anyone to review it. They couldn't get anyone to even give a bad review. New York Times declined to review it. LA Times, Chicago, all these people just declined to review it. And it was like, but this is actually like a big deal. This is like Simon & Schuster doing an epic on the birth of Islam. It's like, and with all these famous people endorsing it, they were shocked. They're like, why can't we get a single review? And so I'm like, all right, well, that sucks because, reviews are how you get people to know your book exists and so how you get attention. And so I was like, but, I'm relentless. I never give up. So I was like, I'm going to find a way. And so I hired a PR person, try to find ways to get attention. And then suddenly I got a call from a reporter at the New York Times. Reporter at the New York Times wanted to do a piece about sort of how literature was changing and storytelling was changing in the sort of with the modern world of cell phones and stuff like that. Like, I was saying to him that you couldn't do Romeo and Juliet today because cell phones screwed up because, they just text, baby, I'm not dead, right?
Right.
And so how do you tell stories in a world where you have this new kind of connection, right? And so that was the essential basis of the piece. And it was coming out in the New York Times on the day of what's called the pub date, on the publication date, where my novel officially hit the bookstores on a Sunday of April 2009. And so I was like, and they interviewed me extensively, and I talked about my books and how, why being a historical writer gets around that. Like I don't have to deal with the problem of, the zoomed connection that takes a story away, right? They're writing a book from 7th century Arabia. There's enough non-technology that allows drama to happen, right? And so they loved it. The reporter quoted me. So the morning of my pub date, I was so excited. I didn't even go to the bookstore to see my novel. The first thing I did was go to the Starbucks in the morning of Sunday and pick up the Sunday Times because I was going to be in it, right? And I picked it up. And I got the article, and there's this huge article in the Sunday Times. And if you go to New York Times, if you search my name in New York Times archive, you'll find it, right? And I'm quoted extensively with other authors about this topic. And they don't identify me as an author. They just identify me as a TV writer. They don't mention my novel at all, which is coming out that morning. And the reporter knew.
That's insane.
That's insane. So I was like, what? Because all the other authors are mentioned, here's this person who wrote this book, and they're all, but I'm like, and Kamran Pasha, a TV writer who worked on Kings. Wait, what? My novel's coming out today. It's worthy of mentioning in this piece, his first book, which deals with this issue of writing historically so you don't have to deal with modern technology, right? Why would you not mention it? So I immediately emailed the reporter. I'm like, look, I appreciate this article. I appreciate you featured me very heavily in it. Why are you not mentioning my book? You knew it's coming out today, right? We talked about it. And he emailed me back. New York Times reporter emailed back saying, I don't know what to tell you. I want to apologize to you. Of course, I mentioned your novel in the draft of my article because it's important to the story. And the editor took it out, wouldn't tell me why he took it out.
Oh.
The editor of the New York Times took out references to my novel and wouldn't tell the reporter why. And so that was April 2009. I said, something's happening here. Something's happening here. The system has decided I've gone a little too far. Like they wouldn't review it. And someone in the New York Times said, don't bring this guy any more attention. We won't review his book. Oh, damn it. He's in this article. Get the book out. And this was a slap in my face. I couldn't believe this.
Yeah.
And then my career started going through struggles. So I'd risen up rapidly. King's got a lot of really good attention, right? And, suddenly my agents are like, hey, man, people just not want to give you staffing meetings. I'm like, what's happening? And then suddenly all these shows started getting greenlit, and I won't mention them, but you know what they are, major shows that came out with the Muslim terrorist as the theme, right? A bunch of them came out, and none of them wanted to meet with me. I was like, but I just did Sleeper Cell. They got all this attention, right? And had Muslim terrorists in it. And that they're like, they don't want to meet with you. And the rumor initially came back is that, you challenge their narrative, which you'd actually show sophisticated issues of what's happening in the Middle East. They don't want to do that. That was the rumor, and that was later confirmed by a friend who actually talked to the EP. Said, "Yeah, no, I didn't hire him for exactly that reason. I didn't want him being in trouble in the writers' room. I don't want to tell a sophisticated version. I like the evil Muslim villain, and I got my reasons for that. And I don't want a sophisticated storytelling of what's happening in that region. I got my agenda, and this kid's going to be a problem." So the next several years from that was I had just risen so rapidly, and I kept getting punched in the face, and I was like, "What the hell's happening here?" And it took me a long time to get back on my feet. I've talked to others. I worked on the Tron animated series, and I love working on the Tron animated series. But one of the reasons I was working, I'd never done animation before. Why had I done animation? Is because for some reason I stopped getting any interviews on like traditional drama shows. So animation came. I said, "I'll take it," and I think I did a good job on there. And it took me a long time to get back on my feet. But now, what have I done recently? I worked on shows on the CW, which were good shows, like Rain, which was a historical drama, but they ain't no Muslims on Rain, right? It's a Mary Queen of Scots, right? Even though I actually tried to introduce an actual Ottoman character that was from the history, but they didn't want to do it, right? And then I worked on Roswell, New Mexico as co-executive producer, right? Which is, science fiction show. And I love aliens, and I've had my own experiences in that stuff, which you can talk about, but, in the world of UFOs and things like that. But again, that's where the industry is comfortable. As long as I'm away from the Middle East Islam stuff, which they want to control the narrative on, they're comfortable with that. They're comfortable with me they're not blocking that. But when it comes to this stuff, they're like, "Yeah, no, we're not going to let this guy do anything in that area because we have to control the narrative." That's the situation.
You would think that with the current way they are shouting out that everyone should be looked at and everyone should be accepted and everyone should have a voice, that they would be perfectly fine with that. That makes no sense.
It makes sense if you realize it's all fraudulent, right? The interesting that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years, because it's all been 2017, really. It's the rise of Mr. Trump catalyzed a lot of these things. So from the time I arrived, from 2001 till about 2016, I was still sort of the prominent Muslim guy in Hollywood. There really weren't many others that anyone knew about, or certainly anyone that identified it. There's quite a few successful Iranian screenwriters who are like, "Yeah, my grandfather was Muslim. I'm not into that," right? Fine. But I'm very prominently that, right? And there weren't a lot more. Then in the last 4 years, I've been delighted to see 20, 30. I actually went to a meeting of young Muslim writers, and there was 25 of them. I was like, "Where the hell did all these people come from?" Yeah. Who are all these 22-year-old kids I've never met before? And there's a meeting of them. But what was interesting was this, and they're all, God bless them, they're getting to get jobs. Some of them are getting staff jobs or whatever. But what was interesting, as I talked to them, they were the kinds of writers or kids that the system was comfortable with. I'm a traditional Muslim. I'm pretty conservative socially on a lot of issues, right? But these kids are coming from this generation growing up in America. The very first thing we did at this meeting of young Muslim writers was everyone had to list their pronoun. Now, to me, that's very strange. Like I said, I don't care. You tell me your pronoun is this, I will address you by that pronoun with respect. But I don't feel the need to list it, and I didn't feel the need that we had to have this ritualized thing where all of us are listing our pronouns as we introduce ourselves. It was bizarre to me. It's bizarre to me that this is happening amongst Muslims who are pretty conservative, but these young kids aren't, right? So they fit into the social narratives that the industry wants to promote, right? And so they're all like, "Yeah, that old Islam stuff, we don't want to do any of that anymore. We want the new reformed Islam that fits into the woke culture, right? That they're making up." And the industry will promote that. So these kids, God bless them, they have their journey, but they're all starting off at the lower levels. None of them are rising to the executive producer showrunner level, which is the level that I reach, right? They weren't, and I don't know that they ever will be, because they'll be useful as faces, for the political agenda, but they can't actually give them control of the narrative. I proved that. I went too far, the system, and the system was like, "Okay, this guy's actually changing how people are thinking about that region, and we're not interested." Yeah, I'm sharing with you some. I haven't told all these stories. You're getting some of the first time of these stories.
Thank you, and I tell people, when I sit down and talk about anything like this, I like to just let people talk. That's what I do, and I'm so grateful that you're doing that, because to me, it's okay, if you sit down in a room with a group of writers, you're okay. Stand up and tell me your name and tell me what you've done. If you've just gone to school to be a writer and this is your first job, say that. Well, this is my first job in a writer's room, or say this is my first job doing this. I went to this school, or give me your credentials. That's all that matters. That's all that should matter. It shouldn't matter what skin color you are, what race you are, where you grew up. It's just what you've
and it shouldn't
done.
matter how you identify on the gender
Yes.
spectrum, right? I mean, I was like, what? All right.
Yeah, that exactly. It should not matter what gender or what ideology.
Yeah,
None
I
of
mean,
that matters. It
this
just
was
matters
a
that you're a
writers
writer.
group. It was a writers group, but it was a writers group that was clearly now being, taken over with an agenda. And I left that meeting very uncomfortable, and I contacted, one of the people involved in it who I had mentored, who was a young writer and I was like, man, what's this all about, man? I don't want to do this gender stuff. Everyone, like I said, if someone tells me their gender is X, Y, Z, I'll go with it, right? But why do I have to volunteer? It's like a ritual. It's like the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning. Why do we got to do this, right? And he got really defensive, and it was an unfortunate conversation because that's where the current generation is, right? To them, it's like a bit of a religious thing. You can't question it. And it's funny because, I think our religion ain't exactly on board with some of this social narrative, but maybe the Hollywood Muslims may be going another direction than me. I don't know. So whatever. It is what it is.
And you should be free to not, if you don't like something, if something makes you uncomfortable, you should be free to say that. Yeah. Without having to worry about someone judging you because you said, guys, that made me uncomfortable. I mean, that's like, it'd be like going to an AA meeting and having to talk about, well, I want to drink right now and I want to drink this specific drink. And some people might do that, but you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't be forced to. Hey,
if it's bringing, that kind of thing, especially in AA, would be very triggering, I would imagine, for a lot of people. Why compel them to do that if that's not part of their healing?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't understand. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's not. I know some people feel the same way I do, that you should just be who you are, and I don't have to worry about bending the knee to any kind of system that would make you do something like that.
But again, I really believe all these young kids believe that they were doing the right thing, and that's fine. They're also part of a generation. They were raised in the current educational system of the United States, which has promoted this. So I was raised in the 70s and 80s, where we're living in the world of Rambo and and Karate Kid and all that stuff. We're just living in a different world, a different value system, and what value system I personally like, but that's not where they are. But I also know that, aside from the fact that I think these kids believe it, they also know that's where the system is, and that kind of narrative is going to advance them, right? That kind of narrative is going to advance them in the system. Before, during the early days of my career, you always had the stereotype of the Muslim woman with a hijab, who was, on every TV show in the background, right? And now the Muslim woman with the hijab has to be transgender, right? So that's the next stage of that, right? And so it's just like they know they got to go along with where the system is going, and it's not for me, and it is what it is. Like, yeah, I'm going to keep one of the reasons I'm focusing a lot when it comes to that region, because I'm developing a couple of projects set again in the Middle East, because that's my specialty. But I'm focusing again on historical things where I don't have to deal with the social narratives today because they weren't the reality of the time. So one of them is a huge epic series I'm developing of the Ottoman Empire, right? And the wars between the Ottomans and Europe, right? That's a huge sort of Game of Thrones type epic series. And so, people weren't having the same kinds of conversations that we're having about race and gender in 17th century Turkey, right? So
right.
I can at least do that there. Will they get on the air? We'll see. I'm also working, but like I said, I realize the town doesn't want a modern look at such these issues. So when it comes to modern stories, I'm developing it. Right after our call today, I have work to do on a horror project I'm developing with a studio. Like sort of an American Horror Story type series that has no Muslims in it, just a bunch of people in a little town in New Hampshire, right, that are dealing with a scary thing that's happening in the series. And so I'm comfortable doing that because, again, now I'm just focusing on the horror stuff, and I'm not dealing with all the weirdo social political stuff that's being shoved down people's throats. And I actually said that to the studio. I was like, because they were, when they got very passionate about my idea, they started saying, well, and we can make it really diverse and whatever. And I said, look, I actually stopped the executive. I said, I'm diverse. I'm a brown Muslim guy, right? I'm diverse, right? We don't have to make all the characters diverse, as you're saying. I mean, I said it's okay to have white people, in the show. It really is. I said it's okay. It's all, and there was almost like a sigh of relief on their end because they had to say the mantra. We're going to make this really diverse. I said we're going to make this authentic. and to this little town in New Hampshire. And there's a lot of white people in that little town. There's some minorities there. I went to college in New Hampshire. I know it well, right? So, but it's okay to have white people at the heart of the show. It's really okay. And it was like this relief that I'd given them permission to not have to do this mantra.
Recently, I was talking about the problem on The Simpsons with Hank Azaria coming out and apologizing for Apu. And it made me think of, I had a conversation with a friend. This was 20 years ago. He came out of a store and he was pissed off, and he made a comment about the guy behind the counter. I said, hey, dude, he goes home. He's got kids just like we do. He's got a life. Give him a break. And he said something. I was like, remember Apu? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you love Apu, right? He goes, yeah. And I said, what's the difference? There's no difference. A guy works hard. Guy's behind the counter. Guy's doing his job. What does it matter? Now, there should be an apology for portraying a character that people loved. I mean, this is like the American success story. Guy comes from Pakistan. Guy creates a successful business. Doesn't matter whether it's a gas station, a Quickie Mart, doesn't matter what it is. Guy gets married. Guy has kids. Guy lives the American dream. That's bad. And
loves this country more than the other characters do.
Yes, he's like pro-America. He's got the flags and the fireworks, and and
he's beloved. Even though now it's socially unacceptable for people to admit it. In my own community, he's beloved in the subcontinental community. We all grew up with Apu. We loved that this character was on the show. We laughed with him. We didn't laugh at him, right? We got the jokes, right? He reminded us of everyone has an uncle that's like Apu, right? And he's beloved. I recently, as you know, I did a thing with our friend, Lorena Creole, talking about Apu, and I posted on Facebook, and I couldn't get any of my Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi friends to even like it. They were so scared to like the post. All my white friends were commenting, I love Apu. And because my friends, people that I've watched The Simpsons with, were afraid to even acknowledge that I had posted that I liked Apu. Right? Because they don't want the crap. They don't want to deal with being attacked and self-hating Indian and all those other. They don't want it. So like, I'm just going to stay away from this post.
It reminded me of I was in a it was a, I forget what it was. I think it was an English class in high school, and I answered something right, and I got up and I was excited. And I was like, "Thank you, come again." And she pointed at me and she goes, "You need to apologize." And there was a Muslim girl in our class, and she laughed and she said, "No, I love Apu." And I was like, "Thank you." No disrespect. There was no disrespect meant at all. I was excited, and that's the way I did. I love Apu. I loved Apu. I loved watching Simpsons, and to lose that.
And it is a loss. The good thing is, at least on DVD, we still have it. Eventually, old episodes will disappear, right? I think they're going to cancel it and vanish it. So everyone get their hard copies of everything. Like, I've got my hard copies of Gone with the Wind, right? Who eventually will be removed from the system, right? And all these things. And so, that's where we are. We are unfortunately at the stage of the deconstruction of a great civilization. And I say great civilization. America has lots of flaws. It still has lots of flaws, but it's still the best place on earth. I mean, I've traveled. I've come from Pakistan. I've traveled. I've worked in Europe. I've worked in China, right? It's still the best place on the planet. Everything you're criticizing about this country, go to China. Go to Beijing and see what's going on there about race, right? Being a black guy in Beijing, and there are, people, expats working there, right? Experience that, right? Being a Pakistani guy in Britain, where I studied in Britain, and I experienced profound bigotry, day to day there that I've never experienced in America. I worked in France. I worked in Paris for Canal Plus, and I experienced deep anti-Muslim hatred. I've never experienced this. I didn't experience this crap in America after September 11th, and I've experienced it 10 years later in Paris, where they'll tell me the people I was working with were telling me, no, there's no anti-Muslim bigotry in this country. I was like, your whole country is set up to hate Arab people who are your slave class. I mean, I'm watching with my own eyes. I'm like, there's nothing going on here. This is a equal society. I'm like, you're all delusional. In America, we're actually talking about race. You're not even talking about it, right? So this is the best country on earth with all of its flaws. And, and we're at a place, unfortunately, where we are the generation that's deconstructing it and ruining what we got and bringing us down to the level of the rest of the world, which is pretty bad. The rest of the world isn't going up. It's going down, and we're going down with it.
what do you think about them editing film? Editing film. I saw an article, I think yesterday, where they were talking about, oh, we're going to go back and we're going to put ads in movies that didn't have them in there, like oh, he's drinking from a Coke instead of a Pepsi, or we're going to go back and we're going to edit this girl's butt out and put a fur rug over it because, my God, you can't show a girl's butt.
Yeah, that's like Splash, when
yes.
I'll be honest with you, the first, can I say something crass here?
Yeah,
the first female butt I ever saw as a little kid, I was watching Splash, and then she came out of the water. I was like, oh my God, Daryl Hannah's butt, and she come out of the water, right?
Yeah.
Right? It was the first time. And so it's emblazoned in my mind still, but you can't look at a female butt anymore, right? You can, all the great masters from the Middle Ages who made these incredible paintings of the female form. That's all wrong. Whatever. So, look, this is all nonsense. It's part of the deconstruction of our society. It's part of the destruction of our heritage. It's part of the erasure of everything that this country built over generations in its actual progress towards becoming a better society. These were all things that were part of the process. Like, the Gone with the Wind, you can hold it up to 2021 values and say it's a racist movie, or you can go back to 1939 and see that this is a movie where they actually gave the first African-American woman an Oscar, right? And the producers of that movie had to fight for her to even get a nomination. And when Henny McDaniel was at the Oscar ceremony, she couldn't sit with the white cast because the hotel wouldn't allow it.
That's right? Insane.
And so, yeah. Does Gone with the Wind look like it glorifies the South? Well, the novel glorifies the South because it's written by somebody who's looking at it from the point of view of Southerners having lost a war, right? And so that's a point of view. You don't have to like that point of view. That's how they saw it. And the entire movie, it was a quantum leap forward on race issues in the United States. And from the point of view of the world it was born in. And to hold it to 2021 standards is ludicrous, but that's where we are.
Yeah, I remember Whoopi Goldberg talking about the first time she ever saw Uhura on Star Trek. And she was running through the house screaming, "Mama, mama, there's a black lady on TV and she ain't no maid." Mm-hmm. And it's like all these things that people fought for, and you want to get rid of them? You want to just erase them like they never happened? Gone with the Wind, especially. When I heard that, I was like, are you guys kidding me? Do you know what that woman went through to be recognized for the role she played? And you're just going to cancel the movie. You're going to make sure no one ever sees it again. Yeah, why?
The courage it took for her to do that. And her character, Mammy, yes, is representative of a real thing of the house slave who had a different experience than the field slave. Malcolm X talked about it, right? And but it's interesting about that character in the novel and in the movie of Mammy is that she's the only one that all these white people respect. She's the only one that can corral them, right? She's the mature, wise person, right, who's seen it all because she's had a hard life, right? And she has no time for their nonsense, right? And so she's the only one that Rhett Butler is afraid of, right? And respects. And he says it in the movie. I see someone whose respect I want. He's saying that about a slave.
Yeah.
That's a quantum leap forward from people talking about black people. Clark Gable saying, I want the respect of this black woman. That's a quantum leap forward from where they were in 1939.
That's right. And even more than that, to go back even further than that, I do a history show with the Dega. At least I did. We turned that into more of like a horror show on Thursdays. But we started out with history. It was 7 Kinds of Mischief. We were delving into history. One of the things he brought up that I did not know this was that George Washington had a slave that was working for him. Mm-hmm. He was working for him, and he was working in the British in the one of the mm-hmm. What was it? It was the command center for the British in the house. And what he would do is he would sneak out in the middle of the night and get intelligence to the American rebels and let them know there's going to be a convoy going on this day and at this time down this road, and this is where. And George was like, "Thank you. If you go by the way they talk, this would have never happened." George is like, "Thank you so much for doing what you do, and you're putting your life on the line." If this man had been caught doing, he would have been killed. He would have been murdered for doing what he did.
A white man would have been killed. This guy would have been tortured.
Yeah,
black slave were betraying the British. I mean, he would have been tortured in a horrific fashion, right? And so, yeah,
and they act like it never happened. None of this stuff ever happened.
George Washington is slavery is not a good thing. I wouldn't want to be a slave. It's
No.
not great. It's not great that our founding fathers had slaves. That's also history. People had slaves. People have slaves throughout history. People actually have slaves now. In fact, if you look at Libya, I have several Libyan friends, and they weren't supportive of the Gaddafi regime. They hated it. Then they went to visit after the United States destroyed that country, and then Gaddafi was killed. And they went there. They're like, this place is a hellhole. It's like Mad Max. There's slave markets in Tripoli. They said, we've never seen slave markets where Africans are being sold, to warlords in Tripoli. And my friends were like, I hated Gaddafi, but he didn't have slaves being sold in the middle of the city. And that's the world Obama created. That's the world Hillary Clinton created, right? They got rid of that guy, and there's slavery in Libya now in 2021. So, whatever.
And in a way, Hollywood. Because some of these people are slaves to that system.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly indentured servitude, right? And everyone is afraid to speak out truth in this environment, right? So yeah, like I said, the only reason that I still speak truth and I still do my thing is because I have faith in God. God's guided my career and has allowed me to outsmart that really aggressive effort from 2009 to 2010, the first couple of years where basically the town was shutting me down without explanation, right? To the point that my agents were calling me like, what the hell's happening here? There's an effort to shut you down. I mean, we don't know what to do. And I got through that. And I was hobbled for a long time, but I got back up. And so that's why I'm speaking out, because I'm like, well, you guys already tried to cancel me. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What's the worst you can do? You already tried to do the worst you can do, and I'm still here.
There's enough people that still want to work with me, that allows me to I'm still here. I shouldn't be here. I should have been out of here 10 years ago. I'm still here. I'm still working. I'm paying my bills.
Still fighting the good fight, and that's a lot of what we talk about in the mornings. That's exactly what it's about. Is about standing up and speaking your mind and saying, hey, I'm not going to be afraid to say, hey, this is messed up. This is wrong. You guys shouldn't be doing that. What the hell are you doing? And especially with your opinion, how can you be silenced for your opinion? We've got all these freedoms in America. How are you going to be silenced for your opinion?
But we don't have these freedoms in America. Look at where we are right now. The elites have now openly made a war on opinion, right? It is no, we are at a place where the very thing we're talking, getting canceled with Kamran Pasha. That's the title of today's video, right?
Yes.
In a global, thank you, Derek. He's a Derek. But we are in a global and in a national situation of cancel culture where people are not being allowed to have opinions. People say, well, you're allowed to have your opinion. You just now have to face the consequences of it. Like, but who's behind the consequence, right? If Gina Carano posts, a comparison about World War II in modern day and loses her livelihood, is that the actual consequence of that Instagram post? Is that the actual consequence? Is that a proportional consequence, right, to her stating an opinion that some people didn't like? That's not the proportional consequence. That is an aggressive, fanatical effort to eliminate opinion, right?
Yeah.
So that's what this is. And I do believe that the more they do it, the greater the backlash becomes. So we're interesting. We are in a cultural civil war. I don't think we can have old school civil wars right now, at least not in the United States, not with nuclear weapons, right? I don't think we're going to see people shooting in the streets. So I don't think this country is too deeply bound together. We're not going to do 1861, 1865 again. People were worried that, if Trump was reelected or Biden's elected, there's going to be a civil war. There's no civil war. Trump's not there. His followers are armed. They could fight if they want to. They're not doing it, right? Because we're not doing that. What we are doing is a massive cultural civil war. And I think we've got about just like the U.S. Civil War took about 4 or 5 years. This is going to be about 4 or 5 years of a cultural civil war. And I don't think the woke are going to win it. I just don't. I don't think they'll create a massive backlash that's going to get bigger and bigger with every passing month, every passing year. And they're not going to win this because they have no sustainability to their agenda.
And they eat each other alive. They're always pointing their fingers at each other, eating each other alive, saying you're not enough of this, or you're not doing enough of that, or you're not saying enough of this.
And they all hate each other. I mean, all of last year, again, to go back to politics, all of last year, I was telling friends of mine in Hollywood, I'm a New Yorker. I'm from Brooklyn. I told friends of mine from Hollywood, like, this Cuomo guy's a scumbag, this governor. Like, I mean, I didn't dislike I was there when his dad was the governor of New York. He was perfectly good governor. But this guy is a real scumbag. Like, he's killed thousands of elderly people when he didn't need to because he wouldn't put them on the ships provided by Trump. So he put them in, he put them in these nursing homes. And everyone in Hollywood's like, "No, you're just spouting right-wing Fox propaganda." People would say that to me. Friends of mine were like, Fox, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. That's all. But he did the right thing. That was what the government told him to do. I was like, oh, the CDC has said we never told him to do that. Here's the New York Times. Like, I don't want to look at that article, right? And so they had their official narrative that Cuomo was a good guy. Suddenly, Cuomo is Mr. Me Too. He's always been Mr. Me Too, right? So why is it now coming out? Why is CNN talking about it now? It's because within the system, Obama or Hillary, whoever the hell's pulling strings behind, in the DNC right now, wants him out because they could put their person in, right? So suddenly all of his Me Too stuff they've all known about and covered for decades is coming out now. And suddenly all of this, the same friend I had this argument with, the same friend who told me you're spouting Fox propaganda is now like, Cuomo's a real scumbag. We got to get rid of him. It's because CNN is telling him that now. And this is 6 months after we had this discussion. He has no memory of the earlier conversation. He doesn't. It's literally like Newspeak in 1984. He doesn't remember that he supported Cuomo. He doesn't remember it. He's like, oh, I never said that. I was like, what do you mean never said that? I got angry. I got really upset and saying, why are you saying these things? Why are you not listening to me and just putting me in a Fox box, right? And he's like, nah, it never happened. Okay. It literally, because now the official narrative is Cuomo's a bad guy, and he always had that narrative in his memory.
Yeah, I came from I was the black sheep. I came from a very conservative family that was you vote straight party. I remember the first time I ever went to vote. Yeah. My dad's there. Oh, all right, what you want to do? You want to vote straight party down this whole line? And I'm like, no. I'm gonna vote for who I think is, and if it's some people over here and it's some people over there, that's what I'm gonna do, because I had to listen to them every Thanksgiving, fight and argue and scream and shout and the eye rolling, and you're just like, oh guys, could you just stop? It's Thanksgiving. Why are we? And I'm gonna have my own opinion about something, and I can't believe that someone would give that up. Because when he got on me about Obama after the first term, it was his second term, when he was like, yeah, you voted for him and I'm like, yeah, I did. And you know what? Now I'm starting to think, well, maybe I made a mistake, but that first time I bring change something, do something radical.
He was perfect because if you look back, when we talk about this guy's filling up stadiums, I've always, having worked in the world that I work in and talking about the topics I talk about, like the Middle East and, war on terror and stuff, I've always been a little conspiratorially minded. I've always been like, there's something going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing. And even though I voted for Obama and supported him the first thing, I do remember at the time when he started rising out of nowhere, I was like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I remember watching him getting that huge DNC speaking gig, and he was like a nobody state senator, right? I was like, there's no local state nobody's talking here. Who is this guy? And he's really charismatic. And something inside of me said, oh, they've picked him. This is the guy they're going to set up to take out Bush, right? But the reason they're going to take out Bush is not to change the policies. It's because Bush is an embarrassment. He's revealing the one thing that you don't reveal, which is the little old man behind the curtain. I mean, he is doing all this stuff so baldly and badly that people are saying Dick Cheney's in charge. The military-industrial complex is in charge. He's not in charge. That's the first rule. You never reveal that the Wizard of Oz isn't in charge, right? And so I was like, they're going to get rid of this guy, and they're going to replace him with someone that's going to look perfect for the role and do all the same policies. But no one's going to talk about it because now you can't criticize him.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Now you can't criticize him.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Kamran seems always a guarantee of quality adult conversation. Yeah, it's a conversation I can't have in Hollywood. I can't have it with my colleagues.
Well, we don't usually talk politics. I'm very, very strict about, especially in the mornings. No, well, we might get in a little. No. You're fine. This is getting canceled.
It's linked to where we are culturally, because Hollywood is the machine, right? Hollywood is a machine promoting this, and going back to Hollywood, I'm on a writer's board with other fellow screenwriters, and, I don't talk about my politics there. And, people who, in the days that I was on Twitter, before I was thrown off Twitter, people kind of aware of my politics. And so somebody teasingly on that board a few months ago said, yeah, no, I think Kamran might be a Trump guy. I'm like, and I said, you know what, let me pop in here, because people are actually making a joke about me. I was like, I'm actually not a Trump guy. I'm not a Biden guy. And I've got these issues with Trump. I can list them. And I got these issues with Biden. And I enlisted in the, I said, but let me tell you, when I became this critic of this thing is I supported Obama, and then he destroyed Libya, he destroyed Syria, he did all these terrible things, and none of you here on this board criticized him for 1 second, and they all became real quiet. I said,
Oh, yeah.
I said, none of you screenwriters here, when I point out that there's slavery in Libya, my fellow Muslims are now enslaved, right? And that Syria, which was a very successful, peaceful society, yes, it was a police state, that's why it was a peaceful society, wasn't racked by a civil war with 1 million people dead, right? And radical religious fanatics running around chopping people's heads off. Syria wasn't doing that. We did that to Syria. So none of you guys said a thing when Obama was in office. And that's when I lost faith in the political system. I said that in this post, in this Hollywood thing. Everyone said, "Hey, so what's for lunch now?" Everyone wanted to change the topic because I pointed out you're making fun of my politics. Have you ever commented on this? No, you're not going to, because he's your guy, and you're never going to criticize him.
Yeah. And Purple Valkyrie says she misses you on Twitter.
I miss Purple Valkyrie. I miss Twitter. I miss posting lovely ladies on Twitter. If it turned out that the reason I was banned was because people didn't like me posting lovely ladies, that would be the ultimate joke. But I don't think that's the reason. I think it's because I went after Lucasfilm. That's the reason. So
yeah, I completely believe that with what they've done to other people. I cannot. The hypocrisy at Disney, and the problem is Disney. It's not just Lucasfilm. It's Disney. Having a inclusion and safe space vice president at a company that's supposed to be about entertainment is complete. It's asinine to me. It's insanity. Like I said, I was always the black sheep of the family. I was the one that questioned everything. I'm going to question everything. I'm going to question what this person says, that person says. I don't follow blindly. And when I realized during that last administration that questioning anything means you're on the right side of something. Well, no, I'm not. I've never been on just one side. I've always been the moderate. I've always been the guy that says, hey, wait a minute. What about this? Now, because I'm doing that to you, but I do that to this other person too.
Yeah.
Because I'm some people would say I'm on the fence, but I've never been really on the fence. I've followed my own path.
You're authentic. You have a way of looking at life and trying to make sense of it, in this political world, but you have beliefs.
Yes, that's wrong, that I should be ashamed of that. And Mexican Iron Man says, hail the great Cameron. It's me, your favorite Mexican fan again. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. And howdy, did I say that right?
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
Assalamu alaikum. And howdy, my brother, mentor Loki. Thank you so very much, Mexican Iron Man.
Thank you, Mexican Iron Man. He's an absolute gentleman. I've interacted with him many times, and he's a classy man. And I thank you for those kind words.
He is a wonderful guy. I just feel like it's almost like I've been pushed onto a side that I never said I was on, because the other side doesn't want me questioning anything.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. When all this stuff happened, when the events of January 6th happened on the Capitol, right? I had, a lot of standard Hollywood response. He's fomenting an insurrection. And I forwarded to some of my Hollywood friends on Twitter. I was like, hey, what about these videos of like these the Capitol Police letting all these people in? Why are they letting them in? I'm watching the actual live stream video here.
Yeah.
Taking the barricades down. I was like, don't take the barricades down, right? Why would you let these people in? Why are you? I'm watching, and they're like, look, those are fake. I'm like, what do you mean those are fake? You're looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's live.
It's literally like 1984. It's like, that's not real. I was like, you're watching it live. They're letting people in. Can you not ask questions? That the Capitol Police is controlled by Congress. It's not controlled by Trump. What's happening here? Why are they doing this? Nothing good is going to come out of letting this crowd in there. Why would they do that? And people are like, yeah, okay, I don't want to talk about it. Okay. I was like, guys, come on, man. I don't know what to do. I mean, have you all lost your minds? Can you not see? We write about this stuff in our movies. Can you not see what's happening here?
And they can't. That's the problem. They can't, because it would go, if they said anything, they're in the same boat I'm in. They're in the same boat you're in. They can't. Yeah, they're canceled.
And that's the horrible part of it, is I know some of my friends know something's seriously wrong with the official narrative we have to promote. but they can't say it out of absolute terror that they can't pay their bills. They can't send their kid to college. That's a practical thing. Look, I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I take care of my mom. That's what I do. I still need money like everybody else. I got to pay my bills, right? But I'm not exactly in the same position as somebody whose kid might not go to college if he gets fired and he gets canceled, right? It's not the same place. And so I can understand why they are trapped in the system. Like they're the new slaves of the system. They can't go against it, even if they know something's wrong.
Yeah, all that fame, all that money, and they have absolutely no power, not only of what they do, but the lives they live.
Absolutely.
That's terrifying.
One of the things you discover in Hollywood, power, fame, and money are not the same things. We often think, like there's that famous quote, first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women, right?
Right.
That famous quote from the 70s, but it's I think it's from Scarface. I think it's from that, right? But it's not the same in Hollywood. The people that have the fame are the fronts for the people that have the power. The people who actually have the power are people whose names you don't know, right? They have the power because they're doing much worse stuff than Me Too, and they eliminated their lesser rivals through Me Too. But the truth of what they've done is always hidden, and the system will never let it come out. Right? You don't even know who their names are. I know their names, but you don't know their names. And so that's the thing is the actors are all saying what it's literally, a script, not just on set. They're being given a script what to say on social media. They're being given a script what to say politically and what to say at the award ceremonies, right? And the script is backed by people who have the power, whose names are utterly invisible to the average person.
Yeah. And Afad Ahmad says, AOA to Kamran from Pakistan, you're a rock star with pen.
That's a very gracious thing, and that he's saying Assalamu alaikum. I'm saying wa alaikum salam back to you. Thank you, and blessings to my friends in Pakistan. As where I'm born, still got much of the culture in me. So yeah.
Do you think there's any way for Hollywood to get out of this? I've heard that people are opening studios in Georgia, that people are going to make like a Hollywood that's different in Georgia. And is that even possible now? Is that something that could be, or do you think they're just going to kind of slink back to the way things used to be after this all fails?
This is the situation. I don't know that there's ever going to be a rival Hollywood. I know Ben Shapiro is trying to do his thing, right? And that's all. That doesn't mean it won't be successful. I believe Shapiro is going to be successful, and I think his company will make money. The problem it's going to face is that, and Shapiro's efforts, right, to create an alternative Hollywood. I think he can get some really good crews, people who've worked on films like as director of photography, as grips or whatever, really good crews, because crews tend to be very conservative. They don't actually tend to be very liberal because they're salt of the earth people, right? You're a carpenter building a set on you're just not the same person as the guy, having caviar, the actor having caviar, right? You're just not. You're a salt of the earth person, and crews are pretty down to earth, normal people. They're pretty mainstream, conservative, or traditional in their worldview. So you'll get those people to crew. You'll get good Hollywood crews. The problem is you're not going to be able to get the most prominent actors. Gina Carano is absolutely wonderful, and she's the most prominent person I think they could get to be involved in her productions. Maybe James Woods, but in general, people who are famous won't risk being associated with Ben Shapiro. So you're not going to get Tom Hanks, who could draw a lot of eyeballs to those projects. You're not going to get that, right? So there's never going to be, I don't think there's going to be the alternative Hollywood. I do think we're going to go through a period, like I said, this cultural civil war we're in, where Hollywood is going to become increasingly more shrill about its politics publicly, while privately going behind what they're saying. They've always done that, but it's going to become more extreme now because the politics of what they have to say goes against their bottom line and making money. I'll give you an example. The politics of what Hollywood has to say, and has had to say for the past year about the health issues we're dealing with, right, is they've come, no one can ever get sick ever on a set ever again. We're never going to allow it. We care so much about human life. They don't care at all. But we care so much. So they've come up with all of the working with the unions. They've come up with all these COVID protocols and complex things. And, you work on a set, you have to be 7 feet apart from each other and allowed to look at the same monitor and whatever. So that's the official protocol that's been put into place. And then privately, the actual things that are in production are not following those protocols because they can't actually make a show if they can't allow two people to be near a monitor together, right?
Yeah.
And they can't do it. And so they have to publicly state the most extreme lockdown narrative. They support it. We're never going to leave our homes ever again. And privately, they will do this. I heard about an incident, on a major set that was filming last year, where they wanted to throw a rap party, which is one moment you rap, you have a great party, a lot of people have lots of alcohol, they have fun, right? The crew finally gets their reward for having endured this shoot for the last several months, right? But you can't do a rap party under the COVID protocols, right? And so what did they do? Do you know how this movie did it? They filmed the rap party as a scene. So all the crew are extras in the scene, and the actors are having fun. It's a scene that's not going to be in the movie, but it's officially listed as a scene.
So they could do it.
Yeah. So all the crew are extras in that scene, right? And so they all just had a wild party that they filmed and are not going to slate in the movie because it doesn't belong in the movie, right? But that is what Hollywood is going to do. And the same people are saying, we got to protect everyone's lives. Not one person can get sniffles ever on a production ever again, right? And they're not doing any of it. And that's the direction Hollywood is going to continue going in. They're going to get more and more shrill about their politics while privately getting further and further back to practicalities. You mentioned Georgia, Loki, you mentioned it. It's fascinating because the official shrill narrative that I've been hearing now for about 2 or 3 weeks, and you see in the trades, is the new Georgia election rules that people on the left are right.
Yes.
And we don't have to debate whether they're good or bad. They're just out there. And so Hollywood has come out and said, it's absolutely immoral. This is voter suppression to require people to have IDs. Well, you have to have an ID to get a COVID shot, but that's a whole other conversation, right? But you can't, you don't need one for this. It's voter suppression, right? All that stuff. So Hollywood, that all the trades are repeating this narrative, the trade newspapers, right? And all the publicly, you're having famous people come out and say all these long speeches that are published in the trades condemning Georgia as a racist state for requiring IDs and all this other stuff. Right? No one is shutting down any production in Georgia. Georgia is one of the biggest hubs of traditional Hollywood right now, And the most embarrassing thing is a couple of days ago, you had one of the major productions, and I would go to deadline.com and look it up, but one of the major productions basically put out, had an African-American actor come out and do a long, lengthy spiel condemning all the Georgia rules and all the ways they're going to fight the Georgia rules, except they're not going to shut down the production of his film in Georgia.
Of course not.
Yeah. So, and he was put out there to be the black face of this. This is all the ways we're going to protest this evil. And the people in the comments are like, but you're not shutting down the production. You could just do that, right? You could just do that. That would hurt the Georgia economy real fast, but they're not going to. So this is the fraudulent dichotomy we're going to continue on for several years until they feel safe to just stop saying this nonsense. And it's a weird pattern because we went through this with Me Too. There was a period where Me Too was the thing that was terrorizing everyone. Everyone was afraid, of their truths coming out, and people who had done nothing were afraid that they'd be falsely accused by some vindictive person. That went on for about a year, and I thought it was going to last a year, and then it became too much. Then it was actually getting back to people who had power, and it was beginning to get their names in the press. So you don't want that, and then it was actually messing up people that they wanted to protect. So it went away. And the moment I knew it went away is when they set up this official organization in Hollywood to address it called Time's Up, right? Whose only purpose is to get donations and then, not do anything, right? But the money goes into their pockets of the executives. So Time's Up. And so I said, the moment I saw Time's Up, I was like, yeah, okay, here we go. That's Hollywood's official solution. It's finished now. Every time you talk about Me Too, they'll say, hey, go talk to those Time's Up people. They're dealing with it, right? And that's what they did. And it vanished from the news.
Yeah, and they have I believe there's even an official investigation company in Hollywood, and their only job is to investigate things like that for production companies that are working on a show or working on a movie. Oh, well, it came out. This person's been naughty. We're going to send in our official investigation. And their job is to make sure everyone's truth is heard. And
correct.
Like,
not to actually address the situation. You're right. Which is like this, which is the HR at all these companies. HR, human resources at all these studios. Their purpose is to protect the studio from lawsuit and to protect the money flow. That's their purpose, right? And so that's why I've worked with Warner Brothers several times. And Warner Brothers, unfortunately had this thing where their HR, they covered up for some of the biggest sexual harassers on the CW, right? And it came out. And their whole purpose of HR was to cover up all the complaints. And then once the person that had raised the complaint of this person fondling them or doing something, illegal, inappropriate, all of that, their job was, once they've identified the complainer, is to now find a reason to get the complainer out of the company because they're a troublemaker, right? So that was what HR's purpose is, and it remains that way. It hasn't changed.
No, it hadn't. The problems with the Justice League movie and everything that came out of that, and Joss Whedon of all people, everyone knew. I knew back in the early 2000s, Joss Whedon's a dick. Yeah. Joss Whedon treats people
banging all
like
the actresses on Buffy.
He's banging all the actresses, and he's a dick. Hollywood knew that.
Oh, of course we did.
So why is it an issue now?
It's all PR. Again, it's all just to keep some jackass from Twitter creating a drama. That's all. That's all. And to make each other, to hold each other up as the bastions of this ideology none of them actually believe in. None of them believe in this, right? They're just saying this stuff. Now the most recent thing we see today is one of the former presidents of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, that sort of bogus organization that gives out the Golden Globes. I mean, it's always been a bogus organization, right? It's become more bogus with time, and so it's become, in the last few years, people are going to figure out that it's a bogus, or it's not actually. I mean, for all the criticism you can do of the Emmys and the Oscars as not being, the award doesn't go to the right person, it's political awards. That's true. Right. But at least it's consisting of people who are actual Hollywood professionals. I'm a member of the Television Academy. I vote on the Emmys, right, of my colleagues. Right. And people in the Movie Academy are professionals in the movie industry who are voting on the movie, whether they're doing it for political reasons or not. It's actual fellow professionals. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association is just a bunch of guys working on newspapers nobody's ever heard of who are part of a club. Right. And they get to vote on the Golden Globes. It's very so. One of the former HFPA presidents is in major hot water because he sent out an email criticizing Black Lives Matter, and one of the executives of Black Lives Matter, who's been in the news recently because they suddenly got very wealthy and bought a lot of really beautiful property. You're like, okay, I guess you're getting paid well on BLM, right? And so he criticized that. And now if you go to the trades today, all of it is about how Hollywood is distancing themselves from this guy. He's not even the current president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. He's a former guy, right? And NBC has put out a statement today condemning him and demanding that the HFPA essentially expel him, right? For pointing out that, maybe Black Lives Matters might not always represent what it claims to represent, right? And so it's most people in this town. First of all, they don't care about Black lives or white lives or anybody else's lives. They care about their own lives, right? They don't care at all. Couldn't care less, right? And so they don't believe any of this stuff. But now that's the official, that the witches are not, the witches of Salem have found their new target. So that guy's next now, right? Everyone's jumping up and screaming, burn him, burn him, burn him, burn him. And that's going to be the new drama for the next few days.
The culture, I don't understand the culture. I just don't. And I want to thank you, Kamran. Thank you so very much for being here today and talking with us. It has been an extremely interesting conversation with you to get to see behind the curtain. Yeah, some of the things we talk about every day, and we talk about fighting against, we talk about standing up against and saying, no, don't lose your voice. Stand up, stand tall, shield wall. That's one of the things we say, because, Viking thing, shield wall, stand tall. Don't let them take away your opinion. Don't let them take it. And definitely don't let them point their finger at you and label you something just because you have an opinion. So thank you. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you, chat. Really quick before we leave, I've got a couple of things. MB Geek Let's Talk sent a $5 super chat and said, what is best in life? To enjoy a story, to have to think about the context, enjoy the support, and understand those who have a disagreement. Brandon Wolf with a $5 super chat. Long live the fighters. Long live the real people. We got to that 70s rock fan who put up a $5 Canadian super chat and said, Kamran on a stream is always a guarantee of quality adult conversation. And of course, the 1999 super chat from Mexican Iron Man who said, hail the gate, Kamran. It's me, your favorite Mexican. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. And howdy, my brother, mentor Loki. Howdy to you, Mexican Iron Man. I'm going to play a skull real quick. Thank you guys so very much for your super chats. Skull!
Dollar? I've never seen a dollar. Nobody's got a dollar. Let us see the dollar. There it is. It's beautiful. Take your hat off, boy. That's a dollar bill.
My little way of saying thank you for the super chats and thank you for being here, Cameron. Guys, we will be back on Clobbering Times tonight at 7 p.m. for the comic book roundtable. I hope to see you all there. Again, Cameron, thank you for taking the time to hang out with us and talk with us. I hope we can have you again sometime in the future.
I'd be honored. Thank you for bringing me on, and blessings to your chat and your community. You've got a great channel here, Loki.
You and your family too. Thank you so very much, Cameron.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.